As a business owner, whether it was in your prior business or now in VapeJet, what have been the biggest challenges for you?
I mean, number one that's always on the forefront of my mind is cash flow and making sure bills at the end of the month can be paid. I mean, finance and money is always a challenge in small startups. You don't want a bunch of money just sitting around doing nothing. You have to deploy everything, and that makes everything stressful. And it's always a challenge. Where's the next set of money coming from? Is it going to be revenue? Is it going to be investment? What's going to happen next financially? That's always, that's one of the biggest challenges. Just we'll take the easy way out of that question there real quick. But besides that, it is being infinitely adaptable. At the very beginning of a small startup, 1 minute I'm spent in front of a CNC machine milling out pieces of aluminum on my way to an insurance meeting 20 minutes later. That gets challenging about just switching from different headspaces, constantly having to take one hat off, put the other one on, and almost change personas sometimes because, I'm not going to interact with my supplier for my sheet metal the same way that I'm going to interact with my banker. Keeping all that in mind and presenting everything and getting everything done when it's either just yourself or a very, very small team, that's a challenge, and it starts to eat into your personal life as well. Everything blends together, and you forget when one thing stops and the other begins.
I love that, and I totally relate to that point. I mean, in my own business, I work with really super experienced professional accountants and finance people. I work with entry-level people just kind of starting out in jobs. I work with clients, of course, and so it's like the way I have a conversation, I think about that all the time, the role that I play and the conversation I might have with that super experienced finance and accounting person is a lot different than the conversation I have with an assistant who we just hired, who's an entry level, and it might be one of their first jobs. So I thought it was just me. So it's great to hear that
No,
that
not
we
at all.
that we all feel that we're all suffering from it.
One other thing, one of the things in threes, one of the other major challenge that I'd like to point out would be managing myself and my own expectations and what I'm expecting of other people that are maybe contractors, employees, and just managing my own expectations and keeping a realistic view of everything while still pushing the team forward and accomplishing goals that most people say are unaccomplishable. Pushing forward every day and managing my expectations when those plans don't come together, because plans don't come together. You take a plan, you execute it, you hope it comes together, but you adapt as different things come flying your way. And managing your expectations and, I guess, expecting the unexpected and just being able to roll with the punches has been a challenge and just a thing to keep in mind at this phase.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make, and one of the challenges that I found that I'd love to get your feedback on is that is finding that what that expectation should be of the people on your team from the standpoint of, I think what you're alluding to, which is the sensibility that I have as well, is you can never really expect other people, whether it's even your best employee, you can never expect them to care as much about your business and the business as you do, right?
Right.
And so, you can't place the same expectations on your team that you have for yourself in that regard. What I find, though, sometimes is that I go too far the other way, and I realize it when I start realizing, oh, wow, they're taking care of things, or they're caring at a level that I didn't expect that they would. And then I feel like I've just left a bunch of chips on the table. It's like, how long have I been under expecting or, from them? And so I struggle with finding that happy medium.
Yeah, I'm in the same position right now, just finding and managing where all that sits. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Well, it's good. That's another good one to know, that to kind of confirm that we're not the only ones, right?
Right.
I'd love to hear about how your military experience, and if there were any particular skills that you developed there that has helped you as a business operator.
that was a really interesting period in my life. I was, you know, again, the person to ask forgiveness rather than permission. I got in trouble a lot. I was very good. I got promoted plenty. I got demoted a couple times. You know, it was very up and down because on one hand, I was very professionally proficient, very good at my job. I was a subject matter expert on various systems and, you know, had the respect from that. But on the other side, I was very young, kind of very arrogant, and those two don't mix well in such a rigid structure, especially with chain of command, and that got me in a lot of trouble. That said, getting in that trouble and learning how to navigate within the system and still learning how to express myself and my desire to create and just do things, just create action. Learning how to do that within a constrained system, and eventually, you know, towards the end of my military career, not getting in trouble quite as much, learning how to still be myself within the confines of a system has been instrumental to, you know, what I do, what I've done throughout the rest of my life, especially starting a small business, because sometimes you do have to bend rules, or you do have to do things in a very unconventional way, but you still have to keep in mind the way the overall structure of the world is meant to work, and your requirements, your what's the word I'm looking for here? Your obligations, navigating that system while still just exuding action out into the world. That was a skill I learned from the military, and that has really helped me.
And you went from the military into the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, is it fair to say that was still more rigid and confining than being your own entrepreneur, but maybe not as rigid as being in the Navy?
That's very correct. Yeah, I was able to get a lot more done. My idea, you know, I could manage small teams of people and bring my ideas to a physical reality and, you know, accomplish projects and, you know, actually perform actions out there. But I still felt very constrained, but my time in the military taught me how to best accomplish my goals within the confines of the system, and that's why I was so proud of my professional career, is I was able to get so much done despite, you know, sometimes bending structure or doing things in a very unconventional way. I still accomplished everything for my teams and was recognized as such, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without, you know, spending my early 20s battling the rigid confines of the military structure. So,
yeah, it's almost like you have this entrepreneurial journey of kind of breaking out of those confines, starting in the Navy and then going corporate and then moving into pure entrepreneurialism from there.
Yeah.
I think the other piece of it that I relate to, I always tell my teams, I was a partner in an accounting firm, 40-person small accounting firm in Portland, Oregon, but otherwise a traditional accounting firm. And accounting firms are fairly rigid usually in how they train people up, and so there's a lot of oversight. So your entry-level staff accountant will do work, and then some more senior-level accountant will review their work and provide them with feedback, and then the entry-level person has to make corrections, and then there might be somebody even higher up the chain that reviews all that and provides everyone with feedback. And so you have this very kind of rigid structure, and process is so important. Like every accounting firm, they make their money by having a good process that's both efficient but also ensures a certain level of quality and expertise is being delivered if it's a good CPA firm. And as a partner, when I became a partner in an accounting firm, and I had a team that was working under me, and some at entry level and some, and they were working for some of the managers or people who were also working under me. I remember I would tell kind of the entry level people that were essentially in training, don't watch me and do what I'm doing, because I have that same kind of bent of being a little bit wanting to kind of veer away from the rigid structure or the process, but having been through the rigid structure and process of a public accounting firm, I understood the importance of it. I understood where its place was. And although I had reached a point and a career choice for myself at that point that I could kind of fly above it to some extent, it still had a place in the overall grand scheme of things. And I think that that's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit from you is that you've had the opportunity to kind of grow up in the systems that you did. You have a healthy respect for, there's a time and place for process and standards, and there's a time and place for thinking outside the box. And
absolutely, my first hire was someone who I knew would be a stickler on process and procedure and everything else.
That's perfect. Yeah. So you find that person who can compliment you in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's great. So we've been talking about how entrepreneurialism allows you to kind of break out of the rigid mold, and we've been talking about it mostly from the aspect of how you do work and thought processes and things of that nature. What are some other benefits that you found to owning your own businesses?
Freedom of movement. I am tied to my business. It's a child to me. It requires enormous amount of attention and care, but the decision to, take a few days off or do what needs to be done, that's all on me. I don't have to answer to anybody else. That freedom of movement and that freedom of expression really works well for me because I do kind of have a very rigidized internal set of priorities and what needs to be done and what things have to be done. Having the freedom to express that 100% myself is very freeing. It's very liberating, and it makes, there's the adage that, as a business owner, it's always on your mind as you go to sleep. It's hard to sleep. You're always thinking about it. And yes, I'm always thinking about it, but the anxiety isn't there because I know that I've done everything I absolutely can. It is my child. It is my everything. I put everything into it. And at the end of the day, I have no one to answer to but myself, and that includes accountability. If something goes wrong, I don't have to wonder or prod my thought process as to where it went wrong. It went wrong with me. And while that sounds like a lot, it's very freeing. It frees my brain up to think about a lot of other things rather than trying to constantly shift things around. So that freedom of thought, freedom of just expression and putting my vision out into the world has been the biggest benefit of owning my own small business. I would say I could probably list a bunch of things people would list as negatives to owning your own small business, but I don't really see them that way.
Sure.
It's a hard question because what's the benefit? The benefit is it being what it is and seeing my vision come up into the world.
I think what's so great about some of the things that you're sharing with us about why you enjoy being an entrepreneur and why you enjoy owning your own businesses is that what you're not saying, well, I do this because it's the way I'm going to make a ton of money, because I'm trying to get a 10x exit, and I could never do that as an employee. I mean, I think obviously there's a lot of risk and a lot of work to what you're doing, and that should command, under the right circumstances, a good financial reward. But I think what's great about this discussion is that that's not the center of why you do it. I get the impression you would do it even if there wasn't a great financial reward.
I will be completely honest. When it comes to financials and everything else, I keep an eye on how everything's doing. I look at the overalls, and I trust the people that I select to advise me. I picked them so that I could trust them 100%. If I didn't have that and I constantly had to worry about that, that'd be more on my mind. But yes, for me, money is just a stressful thing. I do this to put my vision out into the world because I would do it even if that, like you said, if that financial reward wasn't there. And then I rely on the people that I trust to make sure that all that falls into place, because we all like to be rewarded for our work. We all like to provide for our families, do, whatever it is you're doing. But for me personally, the drive is is an internal just drive to build.
Yeah.
And what comes from out of that, I will enjoy.
Yeah, you're a maker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with Grow Camera, the prior business. How did you get that company started?
So that was almost an accident. I was working on another side project. I was working on actually automating grow facilities, larger scale cannabis grow facilities. I was writing some software and putting some sensors in a system, and I was from my time in the satellite industry, I was familiar with a imaging technique that I wanted to make cheap. I wanted to take that imaging technology that people would charge, $30,000 for a lens and just make it cheap. Well, I started looking online, and there was this entire community of people that figured out how to do it and this and that, and I did a patent search and everything. There wasn't a patent for this company or anything. So I just searched for the tech and put it all together and productized it, and it was part of this larger overall big system that I was designing and building. And a friend was in my office one night, and he just got done doing a speech, because we held a lot of conferences and stuff at my old office. And we were sitting there, and he just looked at me and he goes, "Well, the camera's the cool part about it all. Everything else has been done before. Why don't you just spin that off?" So this one tiny component of a larger project got spun off into a product of its own, and from there developed that idea, brought in a couple consultants to help me with UI design, and I spent a few months just coming up with a halfway decent prototype, and that's from there just started that business. And unfortunately, the story of that business is that's almost the entire story. At that point, I was approached by the company that acquired us, Green Grow Technologies, and they gave a pretty good offer just to buy it outright, and I said okay. And that was the entire story of that company. It was just me, and I used consultants for various parts of the project, but it was just a side project that a friend of mine was like, yeah, that should just be its own thing.
Yeah. That's I think kind of building up the company, it's just you. Maybe you have some contractors or consultants, and then you sell it. I've got a longtime friend who does that with apps. Mm-hmm. He's a developer, and so he'll use contract developers to help him with various components. But as he's kind of scaling it as he goes to market, he's not only a developer, but he's the customer support person, and so he's just taking calls all day long and way into the night from all around the world, supporting that app just to get it rolling, and then and then he's going to sell it, right? Like mm-hmm. He's never going to hire a bunch of people to do that work,
right? Because
that's not what he does. He doesn't build that kind of company. But that's been a transition. Between Grow Camera and VapeJet. With VapeJet, you are building that kind of. You are hiring people. It isn't just a solopreneur type of endeavor.
Right, and actually my strong desire to keep all manufacturing in-house and do a lot of the decisions I've made for VapeJet were as a result of the direction that Grow Camera took. I'm not going to sit here and complain about anything, but as a maker, as someone who likes to create things and to see their vision come out into the world, that didn't happen with that product. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm not here going to speculate, but the company that acquired it never ended up manufacturing it. Mm-hmm. And for a personality such as mine, that's 90% of the drive behind, no, we will do it. We will make it here in the warehouse. Come on, get down there with a screwdriver. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, it's surprising how often that does happen, where companies will make strategic purchases or strategic mm-hmm. acquisitions, and then they'll just table the technology or table the process or whatever it is that they just bought. It becomes for you purely kind of a financial play. It's like, okay, well, I got done with that. I learned something, made some money, and yeah, I totally get that though. It's like, well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. You're not necessarily in it just for the financial play. You're putting stuff out in the world. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what's next for VapeJet then?
Next for VapeJet is really transitioning from this product as we finish up refining it into using the framework that I've created to bring this product to market, to bring other products to market. What I alluded to earlier in that design and iterative process. You know, there was a point where we were transitioning out of plastics and needed to move to metals. Traditionally, what you do is you'll get a 3D printer, you'll mock up your designs, you'll print them out, you'll see that they work, you'll fit them together, and then you'll send them off to a machine shop, and they'll take a couple weeks and tooling charges, and then 2 weeks after that, you might have the first piece back, and then it has to, that entire process takes, you know, a month and a half from designing something to getting it, to putting it in, to testing it, to making one tiny revision of it because you messed something up in your design a month and a half ago. So that's the traditional process. Decided to kind of bypass all that when we were transitioning out of plastics and needed to move to metal. We just built a CNC mill. So get a couple books, start milling things out, do it in-house. Now our process from design to test fitting to iterating and having version 2 of that part out is 2 weeks, not 2 months. So the question, you know, what's next for VapeJet? Utilizing that framework that allowed us to build such an advanced piece of hardware very quickly and very iteratively. Utilizing that process to create more things. Mm-hmm. And we have some ideas on what the next devices are, but you know, without not speaking to what's maybe in the future, because honestly, for every 40 ideas we might have for an actual project, one will get a prototype, and for every 40 prototypes, one will be a viable idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Having the process in place to bring that stuff and design these things and have physical products in our hands, you know, in months instead of a year, that's really the direction of the company moving forward.
And in terms of the growth trajectory for the next 12 months,
mm-hmm.
how quickly do you think things will grow? What do you think your head count might be 12 months from now?
Lean. Maybe around double the size that we're at now. Mm-hmm. Realistically, under 20 employees. Because if we start getting much bigger than that, there's a lot of other moving pieces going on in the background that may be better suited towards moving on toward other projects.
I see.
The VapeJet itself, that business will continue on doing what it does best, building vape cartridge filling machines. But the core team and the process will move on to other processes while still supporting this. But at a certain point, we're filling cartridges. At a certain point, we can't really keep improving. We've done everything we can. It serves a singular purpose.
Sure.
And we've done some cool things like machine learning, QA, and everything goes through a neural network for inspection. And yeah, we've done a lot of crazy things with filling cartridges, but at a certain point, that process that iterative process stops, and then focusing this team on whatever automation project we're going to work on next. That's the future of the company. So yeah. I don't see us ever being a large manufacturer, more a niche manufacturer of products that have, automation. We could go for hours into my thoughts on automation and how that's going to transform the economy, but really we're an automation company and we're just going to make cool automation products.
Wow. Well, I think I read somewhere, in a complete pivot here, I think I read somewhere that you're a hammocking enthusiast.
Yes, I am.
Wait, what does that entail, and how do you exercise that passion?
I love hammocks. I love just hanging around. I love taking naps in the middle of the afternoon in between two trees. As much as I love to work and create things, I also love to just lay back in a hammock and take a nap. It is a very calming and relaxing experience. And like with most things in my life, when I develop a passion for them, I kind of take them to the extreme a little bit. So I started ordering different types of fabrics, finding people to sew, figuring out how to make just the perfect hammock for myself. And then I did turn that into an online e-commerce business that I run on the side.
Oh my gosh, okay.
I don't want any more traffic on that. I sell maybe 2 hammocks a month. It's nothing big. It's nothing to brag about. But yeah, like with most things, I had to do something with it. So I have a small e-commerce website which sells hammocks that I had special designed because I like really big hammocks. They're fun for laying in.
Well, Well, perhaps you'll circle back to some automation related to the hammocks. Who knows? Who knows what's in the future there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank our guest for being here today, Ryan Hoitt, who is with VapeJet. We've learned a lot about his background, and so yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Hey, thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, Charlie, what do you have for us this week?
I've got something a little different than that. I was looking at an article that was just a more general thing that's happening, which is that Dean Foods is going to potentially sell to the Dairy Farmers of America. And of course, that means nothing to anyone until I explain it, which is that this is the largest milk producer in the U.S. and basically they've been losing money in the last 8 to 10 quarters. They've been declining revenue in the last 7 of 10. They've got almost $1 billion in what they call debtor in possession financing. Now, for those who don't know, this is fancy talk for payables, which have been rendered and are owed, but no one has the money to pay. And so we're going to try to formalize that with some kind of agreement so that it doesn't just look like a stale payable. And it's almost $1 billion, so I found that to be kind of funny. They're doing Chapter 11 reorganization, and they're going to continue operating while it reorganizes, which is another kind of an interesting thing to have to go through. They had mentioned in the article that milk sales had been declining since the 70s, which just got me thinking about, okay, so known problem there. You know that your sales are declining. How, in general, does a business, what kind of possible actions might a business take to try to adjust to what they know is going to be a downward stream of revenue? How can they sort of optimize and know that that's going to happen and still find a way to remain profitable? I know there are a lot of different strategies to this, but I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that as a general question.
Yeah, and it's kind of, the phrase that comes to mind is managing the decline, which is my younger brother threw that phrase at me when I turned 40. And I was like, it's like the rest of your life is about managing the decline, right? And
it's a rough 40-year-old wisdom to lay on you.
So I think...
So basically, we're all going bankrupt in dairies, and we need to manage this.
Yeah. It's just like, you don't, just because things are declining towards an inevitable end, you don't just throw in the towel, right? There's still good stuff yet to happen, and I think that applies in the business context too, right? So
I'm glad that was the message. I was worried there.
Well, that's how I choose to see it.
Perfect.
Yeah. This is all a metaphor.
Yes.
The milk company's not going bankrupt. This is all just a metaphor.
Yeah, but I think, I think your choice is, I think the idea of being a business that's in decline is, or where the overall trend is downward in terms of sales over a long period of time, there's not that many businesses that discuss that topic. It is very analogous to old age, right? Because there's not a lot of businesses that discuss that topic in our environment, right? What you hear people talk about from a business standpoint is entrepreneurialism and being a new business and growing and this kind of ever expanding market share that you're trying to grab. And so, the idea that, we're managing an asset that exists and will continue to exist for a long period of time. But it is the amount of cash flow that comes from that asset is known to be something that will go down. And I think what the gut in me, because I work a lot in the entrepreneurial community, my gut reaction to that at first is probably not the right reaction, because my gut reaction is, why aren't you pivoting? Why aren't you figuring out what is the next thing that you can get into to prevent this from happening? And then I think, but that's tackling that issue from a very kind of young, specific way of looking at it, as opposed to saying, yeah, but you're talking about something that actually makes money and is very profitable to begin with. And so it may be declining, but it's still making money and being profitable. There's no reason to ditch it and just move away to something else, right? So I guess you kind of look at your other alternatives. That would be one alternative, is reinvigorate the company, become more entrepreneurial, and find kind of what that new horizon would be. I'd throw that out there. That would be one possible alternative.
And that was what I thought when I first heard it, go to small batch milk or, all grass fed or something. people pay lots of money around here for that kind of stuff. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, sitting here in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, there is. I think we laugh about it being Portland, Oregon, but organic milk or kale, as popular as it is in Portland, Oregon, it does have appeal across the country as well too.
Sure.
So it isn't uniquely a Portland thing, but I mean, I guess if you're starting to look for other alternatives, you say no, that's that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to pivot into some new business. We want to manage this asset well as we go forward. Then I think, it is, we can get into the so-called obvious things, right? In terms of, okay, then let's model it out. Let's forecast what this looks like. I mean, how much cash flow do we believe we will generate from this business with a declining curve, and for how many years, and what's that time horizon? And overall, what is that going to look like? And I think there's still value to be extracted there, even while it's on the decline. I think that's the thing that's counterintuitive to someone like me, who is very focused in the entrepreneurial side of things and on growth. I mean, in our business, we say we work with growth-oriented companies. So I can intellectually think about this possibility, but it's not. It's still a little bit. It still feels a little bit awkward to me.
Yeah.
To think about. Oh yeah, how do you manage? How do you look at that process and extract value? And I guess that's my point. Is even though it feels awkward to me, it is actually, when I think about it academically, it is still true. There's still value to be extracted from businesses or assets that are declining in value over time, or declining in their market share over time.
And I would say probably the same strategy that I would, the same advice I would give to a growing company, I would probably give to like a declining company, and that is to scale slowly. And that means scale up slowly and scale down slowly.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of these guys, and I've been in a failing business before, I've witnessed that. The mindset inside the business most of the time is like, it's gonna turn around. These guys that have guys have been in the trenches for so long. That company's really old. That we've always made it before. We'll make it again. I just got to make a few more sales. This thing will turn around. We'll reduce our debt, or There's always it seems to be an answer.
A hope,
a hope out there. When I think probably they're missing the fact, and I think growth business, entrepreneurs and growth businesses kind of miss this when they want to grow too fast. And I think declining revenue sales in a declining business, or a dying business, or the end of a life cycle of that business, you're right, there's still value there. The problem is they see the value it once had and aren't willing to accept the new value that it does have.
Yeah.
And so they continue to try and operate at a level that's unsustainable, obviously. And then, what you need to do is you need to start tapering and scaling down.
That's the key. I think how you scale down is the key to how you deal with the declining revenue, is just basically trying to put in as many pieces in place so that scale just happens naturally. Whether that's by negotiating things as percentages of sales so that it just naturally adjusts, or whether that's by reducing overheads proactively, knowing that some decline will happen soon. Those sorts of things seem like reasonable reactions a business might take. It's so much harder when the factor is external, because of course in this case, in a small business, it's almost always internal. It's like, why are sales declining? Because we're not doing it right. In the large scheme of like why America drinks less milk from the 70s till now, that changes the discussion quite a bit.
There's externalities there. Yeah.
Two guys in a room aren't going to figure out how to get the world to drink more milk.
Sure.
Right.
But I also think, we look at this very clinically from like a numbers and kind of dollars and cents perspective. But I think the other part that makes this difficult is, as a business owner being that old, being around for that long, it's not just a dollars and cents kind of question. It's also like a human capital.
Very true.
People have spent their lives working for you.
Yeah.
You feel a responsibility to those people. And a lot of business owners feel that way. And making that scale down and having to cut people back and to even be profitable still is a very hard step to take.
Yeah, and the need for just the fact of what they're doing is nutritional in nature, and so people get invested in it too. Sure. Because they're it's a healthy thing. It's not this questionable business they're in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things you guys have said that I want to pick up on. Like, I mean, I hadn't thought about that before, but managing the scale down so that you're not doing it too quickly, for one thing. Like, being ready to scale down. And Charlie, you mentioned, if it's possible that your vendors or counterparties can be negotiated on a basis of a percentage of sales, so that as your sales decline, your work with those parties also decline. But even if you can't get contractual relationships set up exactly that way, it reminds me that when we're modeling in that scenario, we can at least set the budgets that way, right? Sure. And then renegotiate contracts as needed to get them to fall in line with that. And I think that managing the decline, I think what comes to our mind is, oh crap, sales are declining, so we need to make cuts. But then the other side of it is not cutting too quickly, because you end up leaving value on the table. And I suspect that does happen in some cases where people kind of rush away from something. They see that and they're like, okay, I'm out of this business. I'm out of this industry. And there was still value to be extracted there. And so by basically declining too quickly, just like you can scale up too fast, scaling down too quickly, you actually cut yourself off from being able to extract the value that's still there. You no longer have the capacity to do it, and you lose what remaining value is there, I think is a real possibility in some of these cases. And I think that goes into what you were talking about, people's lives and the entrepreneurs and the owners of companies being invested in their team and their workforce who's been with the company for a long time. Putting myself in that owner's shoes, I think about, well, it's hard to co-opt the team on this point, because ideally you would be able to just give everyone lots of warning and just say, hey, this is what's happening, folks. So, you're not going to lose your job tomorrow, but we're going to have fewer people in this business, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now than we do today. So we need to figure that out together. I think an owner and entrepreneur would always love to be able to say that. But the problem then, of course, is, well, do you have a culture and a team that's not going to turn around and once you say that, they're gone the next day, right? Sure. And that's, I think that's what most operators would be afraid of, right? And so then you end up in this kind of unfortunate situation where people quit communicating and they're not talking openly and transparently about what's going on in the business, because probably that team who has experience kind of knows this about the industry as well, right? They know what's kind of going on. The owner kind of knows what's going on, but nobody wants to have that conversation because what they're afraid it might trigger, right? So I think that those are definitely some dynamics that you have to wrestle with if you're managing that that kind of environment.
Well, and I think it goes back to the fact, if you manage, if you manage just with this or just with this, or if you just manage with your head, just your head or just your heart, so either just numbers or just from a human perspective, you can be skewed. It has to be a mix of that, right? You have to kind of quantify and qualify those decisions based on not only numbers, but the human element and the human cost behind it as well.
Yeah. Very true, because you're a business, but at the end of the day, you are working with people.
Sure,
that's all it is.
Sure.
With regard to the people issue, I think you're fortunate if you're in an industry or in an environment where attrition is naturally just part of the game, right? Because then it's not, and you see this with government agencies, for example, is that they often budgets will start being cut, or they'll know that their budget is not as big, and they don't run to first just lay people off. What they often do, like the IRS, for example, that we have some familiarity with, what they would often do is they would just stop hiring. Right. Because they know that there's a certain attrition that goes on anyway. And so if they're looking at a long range plan based on their budgets, what they have available for their workforce and for their team, they know that their team will get right sized by just not bringing on new people over a certain number of years. So if you have enough runway and you're in a organization or an industry where that can work for you, that's somewhat fortunate, right? Because then you don't have to necessarily lose anybody that doesn't want to be lost on the team of it. Yeah.
But then talking about the long runway, it gives then people time to kind of decide.
Yeah.
This is the new normal. Do I want to stay here, or do I want to maybe start looking somewhere else?
Yeah, that's the hard thing, is having that,
But it doesn't sound like they have much of a runway if they already have,
debtor in possession financing.
Yeah.
Not a good
that's
sign.
No.
Yeah, and I think the other, I think the other alternative, if you're a business operator and your business has hit maturity and now there's externalities that are causing your business model to decline. I mean, we see this in the accounting industry. The business model that I would say is declining, I'm not the only one who said it, and I think is tax preparation and specifically the individualized service. Particularly, we see that with 1040 individual tax preparation. I think a lot of my colleagues would say, yeah, that's true. I think a lot of my CPA colleagues would maybe not totally accept the idea that that I think is true, which is this is actually coming for business tax preparation as well, that the entire compliance function is a declining industry. And so, we do see it in something like that that's a little bit closer to home with that. And I think the other alternative, of course, which is kind of similar to saying pivot, is selling, right? Selling, getting out of the, you do cut and run to some extent, right? You do, you sell it off, and it's not, and cutting and running puts a negative connotation on it, right? Ultimately, if market forces are working well, the whoever you're selling to is probably just somebody who also understands that industry or that business is in the decline, but that they're in the mode and ready to manage the decline. That is what they do, right? And so I think probably you have to do some soul searching as an entrepreneur or as an operator of a company. If you're in a mature industry and it's starting in the decline, I think that would be the soul searching you'd have to do is, okay, is that who I want to be? Do I want to be the person and the kind of business that figures out that challenge of extracting value from assets that are in decline like this? Or do I want to sell this and go work in something else that is on the uptick kind of thing, right? So, and that's having self-awareness to know what do you like doing, what are you good at, where are your skills. I think the thing about that industry, though, when we're talking about that, is that anybody who's operating in it today, it's not like a sudden light switched on. It didn't just suddenly decline, right? So I suspect that the operators of that business are already past this. They've already decided who they are and what they want to be to some extent, right? They're not growth entrepreneurs who suddenly found themselves in the milk industry and we're like, oh, this isn't a growth industry. What do I do? Right. That it didn't happen that way. Right.
Yeah.
They chose to be in an industry already that wasn't really a major growth industry probably. And so this isn't that much of a surprise to them. But I think we'll see that probably another industry that we talk about here and that we play in sometimes is the cannabis industry. We'll see it go through that. I don't know if we'll see it in our own careers or lifetimes, but it will go through that phase where it's no longer kind of this high growth entrepreneurial industry. It's more of a mature industry. And the operators who are in those businesses will have to make that choice of, abstractly, who are they and what do they enjoy doing? Being a growth leader, or do they want to transition into being a manager and administrator of a mature organization?
Or I could even see like the paper industry being in a similar situation as the milk industry, right? Think about the booming industry that was paper, newspapers, magazines, everything was mail order, paper catalogs. If you were in the printing business, that was the way people consume media.
Right.
And now, if you're in the paper business, I'm sorry, but that's not, that's just, I would be surprised if it's like 75%, down from what it was.
And it's still there. I mean, what you're like, you look at media, there's still magazines out there that still sell ads, but certainly they've declined substantially from where they were 10, 20 years ago for sure. Right.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, that was a great article, man.
Yeah.
Lots
of interesting things to talk about.
It's such a core
thing
about
on that.
Milk.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't beat it.
Right. And by the way, I love milk.
Yeah. It does the body good.
I was a milk boy from a long time, as a kid. Cereal in the morning, milk and cookies.
Yeah, I know. I've never actually, I'm neutral on milk. I put it in my coffee. I mean, I can drink it. I'm not against it, but it's not a go-to. I don't think of it as, I need my milk today. But I've known so many people that are like I need my milk, or maybe it's triggered by certain things. Like I have one guy that works with me that he loves his donuts, and I buy him a box of donuts or something, and when I get him the box of donuts, he's like, "Don't forget the carton of milk." Like he's gonna have that,
Yeah.
It is a very complimentary beverage. It goes well with the
When I bake a lot, you know what I mean, and like or cook a lot, and like milk, if you're making a gravy, milk, that's usually like a secret weapon. Like in my turkey gravy, like hit with a little cream at the end.
Yeah, eggs too. Making eggs, scrambled eggs, put some milk in there.
It's moisture, it's a little fat, so it makes the eggs creamier.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but and it's not like I don't even, to be honest, I have half and half at home. I don't keep whole milk in the house anymore unless I'm cooking. But
Sure.
I did used to drink it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But I drink less of it now just because somebody told me it's not good for you or whatever.
Yeah, I've met people who claim to at least drink cereal with water, and I don't talk to those people
Ooh,
anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well, too weird.
that's a little
Yeah.
too weird even for Portland.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. In Portland, you got to do almond milk, right?
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
Or like
Silk.
soy milk.
Or soy
Yeah.
milk.
I heard
or-
that oat milk is really good.
Oh yeah, that's the latest. Oat milk.
is
Yeah,
the new
my
thing,
wife
right?
is all into
creamy,
that. Yeah.
right? It's supposed to be creamy
Yeah.
like milk.
Never had it.
I
I
don't
don't
know. The flavor was okay. I liked it
Yeah.
okay, but yeah.
It's not the same as whole milk. I mean,
Yeah. I'm just yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I can't get behind the nut milks only because when you drink it in coffee, it just now it just tastes like nuts and water. Like it's not. It's not like
Yeah.
it doesn't have that creaminess, and the silky. I don't know. Sorry. Anyway.
So have you guys? So I got a couple off the wall questions that are totally. There's no like accounting or or finance. Well, I mean, we could probably spin it into something financial related. But have you guys heard of this social media company called TikTok?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you looked at these things? So I just got into this. The
Oh,
other-
you
so,
just got into this?
So our virtual mentor Gary V's always talking about TikTok, right? So I finally downloaded the app the other day, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm like, I mean, sometimes I'm laughing a lot, but then it's like, yeah, it's like it seems like there's like a song that everyone likes, and then you'll have like everybody across the country dancing to the same song. I mean,
Yeah.
what's this thing about from your perspective? I don't.
So can I give you the 10-second tour because of TikTok? So I have a 26-year-old daughter so I kind of know what TikTok is. So it was formerly Musical.ly, and it was where mostly it was like an auto tune, and all these preteens were making songs about it. And the way I was introduced to it was there was a guy in a hospital room with his grandfather, like basically on death's door, and he's singing how much he loves him, into this Musical.ly app, and everybody's kind of ragging on it because like how insensitive,
Yeah.
While meanwhile all the preteens are like, oh my gosh, this is so lovely, he loves his grandfather, and I'm like, clearly I'm missing something here, so I had to check it out, and I get on there, and it's a little bit like what not Periscope, but Twitter's like short video thing, Vine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Vine,
Vine, yeah.
right? But it has a music slant to it because you can like auto tune your voice and like your video to kind of be this. So it's like this Snapchat meets like karaoke meets Vine because it's short, and so it's kind of like if you put those in a blender.
Yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know it, and probably
Please
if there's
do.
any millennials listening to this and rolling their eyes, we apologize. We're like old guys.
Yeah. We just ruined the
Yeah.
app for everyone right
Yeah.
now, but the three of us discussing
This
it.
is like
But-
your mom
but I'm-
friending you on Facebook.
But
you
I'm
know?
still fascinated by these songs that are. Does the app provide the song that everyone's dancing to, or are they're just all kind of going along with the same thing? It's a community thing. They're just
right. Like the songs are usually provided by the app. If I'm correct.
I can't tell you because the only way that I know about this app is because there's a place on Reddit called TikTok Cringe, which is just a collection of all the most cringy things that happen on TikTok. And that's the only way that I even know about it. But that place is great. You guys
Wow.
should check it out.
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. No, I mean, there's this one. One of the ones that I've been seeing this week, and I don't know, but it's been going on for a week at least. Is it's some kind of rap song that I'm not familiar with. That's basically just somebody using every curse word that they can use, right? And I don't mind cursing here, but I'm not going to do it just for the sake of doing it, right? And so it's like put to a beat, and then they start out without using curse words, and then like within 5 seconds into the song, they just start going at it rapid pace, like going through the entire dictionary of curse words, right? But the trick is what everyone seems to be doing on the app is they seem to be getting their parents to start singing with them and dancing with them. And
Yes.
so and at first I didn't get what was going on, and then I saw it over and over again where you have some young kid with some older parent, and they start kind of singing this rap song together, and then it gets into the curse words, and then the parent gets surprised and gets mad at the kid, and this is like a scene that just gets repeated over and over again in all these families across America who are filming it and putting it out on TikTok. I mean, it's just like this odd.
Yeah, I think we're witnessing a decline of civilization.
Yeah.
No. And I have to apologize to all the younger listeners because like you're probably just cringing at these old men talking about TikTok and how But I have not seen. You have to forward this to us on Slack because I haven't seen this. I need to see this.
Oh, I'll start. Yeah. I'm into my TikTok investigation right now, so
okay.
I'll forward you both my favorite TikTok videos. I don't know. I don't foresee how I can put one together that would be in line with the rest of that community. So I'm not jumping in anytime soon. But never say never, I guess.
Well,
if we really want to ruin the app, we'll start talking some accounting stuff on TikTok.
It's the amalgamous of your mom friending you on Facebook or something.
Yeah,
you know, yeah. No, I was gonna write a rap song about accounting, but
there we go. Okay, if you do that, then we'll do the. Okay, so that'll be the TikTok challenge. So everybody heard it here. If AJ can put an accounting-oriented rap, we'll put it on TikTok.
It'll be single audit related. So it'll be
of course.
It'll
what
be,
else would it be?
Yeah, uniform grant guidance, but we'll call it UG Life.
I like it.
All right.
For all of you out there, if you're enjoying the podcast or the YouTube videos, please subscribe and keep us in your favorites. Put down in those comments questions you might have for us or things you might want us to cover, and we will see you in future episodes. All right, take care, everyone. Bye now.